Hello, thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm delighted to see so many faces in the crowd for this presentation. I'll admit that when one of my Tableau reps came to me and said, "We really want you to speak at the Tableau conference," I was like, "Why?" Really? Why? Because I work in a desk, many of you probably do, without no actual outside contact in the real world. Okay, so you're familiar with my problem. So people actually want to hear me say something about it. Anyway, so again, thank you for coming. I'm so happy to see you, and I'm happy that there are so many people interested in marketing data because it's my love. My name's BJ Price, and I work for the Walt Disney Company. It's a small little entertainment company based in, oh, you've heard of it then, okay, good. I'm actually with marketing and sales with the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts section of our company. So you may have heard about our movies. You might have seen maybe Up from Pixar. I had nothing to do with that. If you bought a watch and it had Mickey on it, had nothing to do with that. If you went to see a Broadway play like The Lion King, again, not me. If you tuned in this morning to watch Good Morning America, still not me. But if you went to Walt Disney World and rode the mine train ride, I got a smile over there for the mine train last week, fantastic. Hopefully you saw some of our messaging about riding the mine train, or maybe you saw some of our messaging about our fantastic magic bands. And so what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is how we at Disney, we wrangle our data, and go into a little bit about that, and how we use Tableau to help us visualize the data for a couple of purposes. One of them is for validation as an input to our modeling, and also for model exploration, so that our clients, who maybe aren't as statistically minded as some of us might be, can start to understand how to understand their results a little bit better. So those are the two big takeaways to get away from today. But first, a little bit about me. I told you I work for the Walt Disney Company. I've actually worked there for 19 years. I started when I was -2. Math people, good. I actually started, I was Dave the Sound Man at Pleasure Island's Adventure Club. Anybody ever been to the Adventures Club? Oh, all right, Kungaloosh, good for you. Inside joke, they'll get it later. And then after I was at Pleasure Island, I went and I worked in operations at the Disney MGM Studios. That's what it was called then. It's now called Disney's Hollywood Studios. And then I went to HR, where I did a lot of work for them in making a new portal, which is very exciting. From HR, I actually worked in engineering. From engineering, I worked in finance. And somehow I ended up from finance into marketing and sales. So I've had a lot of different roles inside of the company. They've all been from a data perspective. So we're always tracking something, perhaps with the exception of Dave the Sound Man. I don't think that was really a data-related role, but I did also do a lot of equipment tracking at the time, and had we had some software like Tableau at the time, we might have been able to figure out that I had a keyboard that had been sitting in repair for 2.5 years that everyone forgot about. So that might have helped. Anyway, so like I said, thank you for coming, and first, before we go on any further, I do work for a large company, and we have a legal disclaimer. Because our fine folks at Legal want you to all know that the views expressed here are not my own. Or they are my own, they're not the company's. The views here are not necessarily those of the Walt Disney Company. Any analytic strategies attributed to Disney might not necessarily be the ones that we use in any given case. So just keep that in mind from our friends in Disney Legal. Thank you. All right, so who am I in Disney Parks? So I told you about all the different roles I've had. I work for a little organization that's 2 years old called CIMA, Consumer Insights. The M keeps changing. It is now Measurement Analytics, so Consumer Insights and Measurement Analytics. It's within our travel and sales organization. So we look at marketing data. We look at economic data, we look at consumer data and survey data, and we try and figure out who's coming to the park, why they're coming to the park, And can we find more people like those people to convince to also come to the park? And by the way, I want you to come to the park again after you've come to the park. So if you can just keep coming to the park, that is really the marketing message that we are after here. I'm going to talk a little bit here about our process, what I do. So we'll go through all of these. This story is all about collecting data. The wrangling of the data is probably the most challenging bit here. And then we do the validation. We use Tableau there. Modeling, I will go into a little bit. This is the only math equation you will see, I promise. And then how I use Tableau to socialize our results. So why is it even in the mix? Why are we here? Why do we care? Why should you care? One of our problems with doing things the old way, which was to just take in the spreadsheets, go take those spreadsheets over to SAS, build a model, tell people what they should spend, and everybody should be happy. It was great, except that now we're in such high demand that we're being asked to update our models a lot more frequently, and so I have to find a way to kind of automate so that I can accelerate our cycle. So in many ways, that's how Tableau has helped us. The level of detail that our clients are asking for is changing. So instead of who's coming that's a grandparent, who's coming that's bringing their toddler, who's coming who's Hispanic. So they're asking for more cuts of our data and more detailed modeling, and because of that, I have to be able to move a little faster. And then socializing the results was really time-consuming for us, because I would, I'd ship off my data to our modeling team. They would do some really heavy mathematics on it, and we put together a PowerPoint deck, and then we'd share it. And they'd say, but what if so then we'd go rebuild the model, and we'd build a PowerPoint deck, and they'd say, but now I want to, so this got to be really problematic. So another reason for using Tableau helped me to kind of circumvent some of these questions. I could put it all into one presentation. So let's roll back a little bit. Who here are marketing people? Marketing. So you're familiar with mixed modeling, marketing mixed modeling? What we would do with marketing mixed modeling is basically I'm trying to determine the impact of marketing, all those ads you see, on some output variable. And I get to determine, sometimes, the output variable. So if you were Superstore, you might be interested in sales. If you were Superstore, you might be interested in clicks on the website. You might be interested in full shopping carts. Those would be kind of numbers you might be interested in. At World, we're interested in bookings. We're also interested in clicks on our website. We might be interested in attendance. So any of these response variables are going to be the ones that I'm interested in evaluating and trying to figure out what is the effectiveness of our marketing. So the question that we're trying to ask, if I have $500 more to spend, how should I spend it? Should I buy a TV ad? Should I buy a billboard? Should I put some digital ads out there? Should I increase my paid search spending? Which one should I do? And should I do it in June, or should I do it in July, or should I do it in December? When should I do it? So that's the first question that marketing mix modeling is trying to answer. And then also trying to give you the breakdown of your spend across channels. So 25% of your spend should be in the digital channel, and 35% of your spend should be in paid search. If you spend more than that, you're kind of over your saturation curve, so you're not getting as much for your dollar, for your next incremental dollar in that media. So you might want to shift it to another channel where you have some more opportunity. So that's what we're trying to get at in our mix modeling. And here I just kind of put together the TV plus digital plus Facebook plus Google equals success. So that's our collecting our data. When I say collecting our data, I must say that we do wrangle a lot of data. Marketing data is extremely messy. You don't have to know all of these terms. One of the problems with it, it comes in at different frequencies. I might get my digital daily data, I can get daily, but my out-of-home and my cinema data, sometimes that takes me 6 months and it's still not right. My paid search data usually comes in daily. And I get all these other variables, and some of it's coming in by a geography, like a city and a state. Some of it comes in by DMA. Some of it comes in by country. And so we have to find a way to wrangle all of the bits and pieces together. And so I want to show you what we did. We created this this is my pride and joy. I love this thing. We created MEDS. Marketing Effectiveness Data Store. This I love. This is how we wrangled all of our marketing data into a usable format that we could start to be automated in our processes on and help create our models. So as you see, I've kind of broken this down in a couple of different sections. One of it is my paid media. So I'll kind of go through meds so you get a sense of how I've broken our data down, because it really does go into how we can visualize it later on. So you have your display advertisement. That's things that you'll see that we buy through Google, like DoubleClick ads, anything that's tagged for an ad serve. You might see a television ad on national TV. You might see it on local TV, and because if you're watching TV in the Florida market or you're watching TV in the LA market, you're going to get specific messaging about maybe being an annual pass holder or going to one of our special events. And if you're living somewhere else in the country, you're going to get a message about come to Disney in general. So we're going to split up that message a little bit. We have radio and local and national as well. Print ads. Those are, the newspaper is still alive and well in many places. YouTube, we spend a lot of time creating content on YouTube, specifically for our tween audiences. Our paid search in Bing, Google, and Yahoo. And then all the out-of-home data, which is your billboards, your taxis, your gas stations, your airports, anything that you drive past quickly. That would be our out-of-home data. Cinema, most of my cinema data comes from National Cinemedia, but you might also get like Screen Vision as another source. You have Facebook data. We definitely advertise on Facebook. All of you scrolling along, if you put Disney in there, eventually you're going to get served up a Disney ad because we're good at that. And then Twitter as well. And then I have some keyword searches as well that we put in there. So all of that kind of is how I wrangle my paid search. And I try and keep all of each of our paid media in its native format to some extent. One of the things that we'll do to data is if it is not already geographically dispersed by DMA, we'll artificially do that by population. So YouTube is a great example of that. For some reason, Google won't tell me where the impressions came from. They just give you a total of the impressions on the YouTube data right now. So we'll just stay based on population. I'll distribute that by the 210 DMAs. So it's a bit artificial at that level. Also, I distribute everything to a weekend level so that everything is grouped into a single week. As you know, we're Disney, so we actually own some media. So if you saw an ad on ABC or ESPN, we may have gotten that for free, or we may have paid for it. Because if I wanted a specific spot or a specific time, I might have been very proactive about it and decided it was worth it to buy it in the marketplace. So not necessarily a determining factor, but I need to separate that I got something for free that I could have also paid for. You might have also seen a bit about Disney Cruise Line, maybe if you're watching Wheel of Fortune during Cruise Line Week, or America's Funniest Home Videos, because the giant prize at the end is a trip to Disney. So that's also free media for us, but it has a value that needs to come into the model. I also put in here our CRM data. That's all the emails and the direct mail that go out to everyone we know a lot about. So we want to continue to track that because it's certainly going to hit in our models. So from there, on the other kind of paid media source I have is our media tools data, and that's planning data. If you ever work with an agency, media agency, maybe some representatives of some media agencies in the audience, it's going to be how you're going to flight your media over time in other words, to try and get to your goals. So you might have TV running 3 weeks in June, and then you turn TV off, and you run paid search for all of July, and then turn it off. So the paid media team will tell you in their media tools or their media planning tool what they're planning on doing. And this is a great resource for validating data, so I'll go into a little bit later. Now, everything across the bottom in meds is things that I consider a plausible response variable. So something I'm trying to determine from the other data. So this could be my web clicks or web visits in Omniture. This could be calls to the call center or clicks on our website. This could be just attendance in general, or our booking data would be another thing that I could consider my response data. And what we're modeling and what level of granularity is being modeled is going to change which response variable I need. Also, some markets I don't necessarily have a way of getting to my response variable, so I have to work backwards down the funnel to see what might be the best usage. So for example, I don't necessarily know when people walk in the gate at Disney when they booked if they're not staying on property. You could have just shown up yesterday and gone into your timeshare. But if you booked, I know when you made that reservation. So if I'm trying to model attendance, I'm probably going to use bookings as a proxy to model the rest of it. Because you could just have shown up yesterday, or you could have planned this 10 months ago, 12 months ago, 3 years ago. And I have no real way of knowing which messages got to you and when they got to you when you made that decision if you didn't actually stay with us and book with us. And then I also put in our external data, so things that might make the decision of do I go to Disney or do I not go to Disney come into play, like what does inflation look like, or what are gas prices doing? They might be an influencer. So consumer product index and the housing prices index, these things sometimes play in our model. So I have a whole section of just economic variables that I'm going to collect over time. So that's meds, that's wrangling of our data. And then validating. So validating, let me see here. I have to figure out how to get back to, there's our mouse. All right. And I'll put this up in presentation. So I'm going to give you an example of how we use Tableau to help us with our validation. So you're thinking, well, all the media is valid, right? It came in, you had it. Well, one of the things I need to measure across time, and I measure this weekly, is what is my volume coming in? So this, again, for those of you, this is not real Disney data. This is very fake. The timing is terrible. No one would ever do this. The prices are insane. No one would ever buy this stuff. But what you're seeing is across the top is a bar chart that shows you a kind of a volume by week. And that would be in impressions. I can also switch that to you. It's show you in spend, because sometimes dollars don't equal impressions. And then across the, this is for TV specifically, so you're seeing it by day part. Some day parts are better than others. Some day parts are more expensive. We can see that sports is a really expensive day part to buy compared to some of the other ones that we buy. And I can look at some key variables by fiscal year. So what's my spending changing by fiscal year? What's the percent change year over year would be interesting. And how cost per thousand, or CPM, is an important variable to track over time. It's a measure of efficiency, so I want to know how I'm doing on that variable as well. So I showed dashboards like this off to our media team every week to say, is this the volume you're expecting based on what you're putting in the marketplace? And this helps me stay ahead of my validation process to make sure that the data that's coming in on a week-to-week basis is accurate, or as accurate as it can be. So I'll show you, you can switch this to spend, little charts change around. You can see when spend goes down, the CPM goes up, which is how that works. And of course we can hover over some of these variables and see how sports is different from others. So this is one of the ways that I do data validation. Another validation is with our campaign data. So once I get to the point where we're ready to model, I'm going to try and make sure that the right impressions are included and the wrong ones are excluded. We're a big company. We advertise a lot of different things, so a lot of things come into my model. But some things need to be excluded. Sometimes I want to exclude impressions that were aired in Canada, or because maybe I don't want to include Canada in my model. I might exclude impressions that were for the Canadian campaign, but for some reason aired in Denver. I don't know why that people got those impressions, perhaps digitally or based on IP numbers, but I don't want them in my model. So I'm going to use data like this to help me understand, are the right things in or out? So again, this is fake data. We put together a bunch of campaigns here. So trying again to get to our fun folks in the strategy and ask them, okay, based on the relative percentages of our different campaigns, is this what you're expecting? Are you expecting that you got more impressions in Hispanic than you did for, say, a Cirque du Soleil campaign? And then at the bottom, I'm showing you a sense of timing. So this is, a basic Gantt diagram. This is when media was in market and not in market. And this one has proven to be the most effective at helping our strategy partners validate our data. Yes, I had something in market, and this is how much it was. Or no, I wasn't supposed to have something in market during this time period. So why are you getting data, and what is it for, and can we clean that and start to understand it? So the Gantt charts have been really useful in helping with the data validation. So I go back to again, data for illustration purposes only. Does not reflect real data. All right. Or anything that I could possibly ever do. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our modeling process. So that's our next step in our funnel of what we have to do. So once I have validated data, I need to take it to the modeling team, and we're going to create a model on this data. And when I say a model, we're going to select some of the data and exclude some of the other data. We're going to transform it so it's in the right format to be put through SAS, for example, and do a regression on it. Or I might take it and do an agent-based model on it, or I might do some logistic regression on it. It's going to change, but I'm going to change the shape of the data and get it into one data structure. So that's assembling the data from meds and validating. Then we prepare it for our modeling process. That could be doing things like ad stocking, which is when we add delay and saturation and lag to some of the impressions. It does a couple of things for us. We know that if you see a magazine, and you're in my dentist office, you see a magazine from 2002. So that's kind of an old impression. But we know that impressions deliver over time, and it's one of the ways that you can help your model be more accurate to the truth. And then selecting the model, selecting the response variable all happens here. And then eventually we get to the point where we have done the magic. We have created the optimal mix and the optimal scenario so that we are ready to say, hey, we're the math people, and we have created your, thank you for coming to us with your problem. Here is your solution. You should spend this much. And that is probably the next part of our problem, is that we really need to help our clients understand how we got to that number and why is that number important. And if I can't spend $1 million, I can only spend $99,999. If I can only spend a dollar fewer, what is that going to mean in terms of my results? So we created what I consider the coolest part of this presentation. I hope you do too. Our optimization and scenario planning. So like I said, the problem with our previous process was that we would go through this modeling process. We'd get the results. They'd be great. You should spend this. You should spend less in TV, more in digital. And then we create a nice, beautiful PowerPoint that said that. And then someone would say, but wait, I can't spend any less in TV because we're already committed. So what can I do knowing that? Oh, okay, you're already committed. We'll go back and we'll put some new constraints in our model, and we'll come back to you in 2 weeks with our new pretty pictures. And they'll say, okay, well, now that you've done that, we're also now committed in radio, and we're above the saturation point that you've told us. So what can I do now? So this became this, cyclical process of keep going back to our client and saying, okay, now that you have a new set of constraints, here's what the model says you should do based on that. And so this got a little tiresome, and if we want to really create a whole lot of models, we can't spend as much of our time as we were in this model and scenario planning cycle. So what we did, thanks Tableau, is we set up a set of visualizations about the optimization. So designed to help our clients really explore what optimal results were, and then we walk them through it and help them explore their own data, and they can start to build their own scenarios. So I have two tools that we're going to see. One of them is kind of like driving a car. It's got one control, gas, it goes, and so it's the really simple dashboard. And then there's the other one, which is my scenario dashboard. It's kind of like flying the airplane. It's got all this stuff going on. So that one is, you got to get through your training wheels before you get to use that one. So we'll go and let me show them to you. Sink in just a second here. What we're looking at is, again, I created some fake Superstore data for the purposes of this. So again, This is not Disney data. It does not represent anything I could possibly ever want to do. On the left-hand side, you're seeing this top bar here is the value. This is, when I say value, I mean what is the thing I'm trying to optimize? It could have been bookings, it could have been sales, it could have been clicks on my website, shopping carts filled, whatever my response variable was. So that's what the value is. And you can see there's two lines. One represents optimal mix. So the mix that I'm telling you, the seasoned media organizer, to do. And the blue line represents what you've done historically from a mix perspective. And so you may have some reasons behind why you chose that mix. Some of them may be, just part of your lessons learned, stuff you've always done that way. And some of it could be because you've made investments prior, then you can't make changes so far in the past. Down here on the bottom, we're going to look at what we optimized. In this case, we optimized the cost per target. And when we optimize something, in this case, we want to minimize the cost, right? So that's the object of our optimization, is to minimize cost. So you can see the cost here is high, and it goes down. That's what we're expecting. And at some point, it gets down to where it's minimum. Hopefully you can see that. In this case, for this model, the minimum is at 109 or 109% of investment. If I go up a little bit, you can see that number called cost per target. That's going up just a hair. And it starts to go up a hair a little bit more as we go out on the line. But most people come to us, don't come to me and say, I have 10% more money to spend. What should I do? I like that problem better. Usually the problem is they took 10% of my budget away. What can I do? So this is designed to let you explore the possibility of your results. So as you can see here, these two lines, the optimal mix being the black one at the top. At optimal, at your current spending level, you can expect $17.5 million of whatever this target was that we fictitiously made up. And if you're using your current mix, you can expect 16 million of whatever that thing was, whether clicks on your website or shopping carts or sales or whatever that happened to be. But if you had to, say, reduce your spending, maybe you only got 95% of your budget this year, then we'll move that little line down and you can start to see what that would mean for you. 16.5 million if you go to optimal. So you couldn't necessarily mitigate the impact of the budget cut by switching from your old mix. And when I say mix, how much you spend in digital versus how much you spend on TV versus how much you spend on paid search, between your mix and what I'm calling the optimal mix. And so down here at the bottom, and there we go, let's get everything back there. Down at the bottom, I'm trying to show you where you're saturated and where you're not saturated. So again, that's getting to the point of if you have another dollar to spend, how effective is that dollar? So the black lines represent where the saturation changes. So if that bar goes over the black line, it's going to turn to red. If the bar is under the black line, it's going to be green because it says you still have opportunity to spend here. So as you change your mix models and your total percentage of investment, these bars are going to change because they reflect on your current spending levels. So the one on the left is where you are currently. So here it's telling us that our CMR, or direct mail, is underinvested. We could spend more money efficiently in that field and work our way up to that black bar. Same with digital display. We have plenty of opportunity here. Digital streaming, also plenty of opportunity to spend money. TV, whoa, hold back. If you can cancel something, that'd be great. Out of home, we're a little overinvested. And paid search, it looks like we're right on the money. Print, we're overinvested. Spot radio and spot TV, we're also overinvested. So this is trying to help you get a sense of understanding how you might change up your mix a little bit. So that's the one view of this data. And then the other thing is, like I said, this is the one knob. This is the car. We're about to go into the airplane where there's a lot of knobs. So this is where we get into scenarios. So remember I told you that my client comes back to me and says, I've already invested this much money in TV because I bought it at the upfronts, and I think that Muppets is going to be rocking, and so we spent a lot of money there. So I've already done some allocation of my funding to this point, so what can I do now based on what your findings are and what the model is telling you? Okay, well, let's see what we can do with that. So in the middle, we have things we have all of these media, and they're allocated by percent. So here it says 120, so that means the person who came before me selected to increase CMR spending by 20%, which is something that we saw that earlier, that was good. There was plenty of money, plenty of opportunity left in the CMR world, so we could increase our spending there. And then digital, we increased to 145 or 45% more. Digital display, we're leaving even here. We might pull back print and maybe pull up paid search. So here you can see, instead of using your mix or my mix, you're creating a new mix. And your objective here is to, maybe you know a little bit about your percentages of your investment, what you're going to do. And if you'll notice, the lines at the bottom tell you how close you are with your new mix to my optimal mix. And you might not be that far off. So a little change from my perfect mix that is still better than your previous mix still might be okay. And that's what I want our users to get away with. And the second graph shows us how the closest mix to the dollar amount you chose. And so that helps as well to show you the deviation between what we are saying from a mathematical perspective should be done and what you can do physically because of constraints in the marketplace. There's two views of this particular dash. Some people like to think of their numbers in terms of percentages. Others like to think of them in total dollar investment. So we duplicated this with the controls being in terms of dollar investment. So depending upon how you think about your budgeting, you can go back and forth between the two. So those are the dashboards that we've created to really assist us with this. And this is actually going to be the focus of a lot of my work this year, is improving these particular dashboards, making them more usable, certainly prettier, and helping to certainly socialize them more in our organization. What's great, and what I want to share with you, is some of the comments we've already gotten just from this prototype work. So some of these are actually comments from our media solutions team. They told me, I didn't even know they were playing with it. I put it up on our server and to see what happened. Lo and behold, somebody found it. I knew it though, because I'm a server admin. So Tableau allows our leaders to see how the little changes are impacting that target variable, which is exactly what I want them to do. I don't want them to go away and say, oh, 109 is the magic number. You should be investing 109% of what you spent last year, and you'll get optimal. But if you only have 5% more, or you had 5% less than you got last year, you can still mitigate for the optimality. So the optimization visual tool, they said, was they're explaining to their staff, this is how you increase or decrease your total budget. And they explained it to me, back to me, that it was how they're exploring the changes, impact of total budget changes. And that the scenario tool, the one that had all the knobs, that's where they were going to make in-flight adjustments, so that if something changed in the marketplace, they could understand how that was going to impact the output variable. So that was really great feedback to get. They told me how it was providing support for them, and this actually came from one of their decks. So they said, the first one was about my annual and my long-term planning. And they said, this is for how I answer questions about how much could or should I spend, how far can I vary from the optimal, which is exactly the types of questions I want them to answer. And if you imagine me going back and creating a deck every single time there was a new constraint, how much time it would take to go through all of those scenarios. And with the scenario dashboard, they're really using it to make near-term decisions as market prices change, as the amount of money that they have. If they need to choose to move money from campaign to campaign, they can see what the impact is going to be. So this has been really a positive influence in our organization, and certainly helped us help others understand what optimization results mean, because sometimes it can just be a flood of numbers from people who are good at math, and it can be kind of confusing. So you saw those, again, they were fake data. All right. So anyway, wanted to share with you all that we did of that particular creation of that tool. And I think this is open for comments. I don't remember if there was questions. If there are questions, I am available for questions, but otherwise, I want to thank you all for coming to my very first Tableau speaker presentation, which... Thank you. And this is me, if you ever see me out on Twitter. Were there any questions? I'll take. Yes, sir. What is it? That's a great question. So most of my data lives in Teradata. I do all of the ETL transformation in SAS and modeling work in SAS, although I am trying to, this year, one of the things I want to do is learn how to put the optimization in R so I can decrease how much load and I can increase my frequency of updating results as well. So R is definitely a focus for me for this year, learning it. I got through the first chapter so far. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for, oh, no, here's one right there. Yes? Yes, I'm using parameter. She asked me all the knobs on the scenario planning dashboard. Those are all done with parameters. They're all parameter controls. Yes, sir, in the back. So the question is did we develop it in-house or did we partner with our strategy team or who helped us make all of this? And quite honestly, all the visualizations were ones that they were used to, our strategy partners were used to because they were the same ones we were creating in Excel or very similar to those. And all we were really trying to do is get them to the point where they could play with them and start to see how they worked in an interactive manner. So this next year, we're really developing them out further. And we did actually use a Tableau partner to help because I'm not brilliant enough to make these. And it helped to have 3 people in the room, 1 driving, 1 that could answer Tableau questions quickly, and 1 that had the vision of what the end state of this was going to be. And we were able to work collaborative. It took about 3 days to put this together. We made some mistakes along the way. I'm not telling you. Data blending was a route we went down and said, oh my gosh, what happened? And it just didn't work out for us. The best part about our world is I control the data. I can make it look anything like I want it to. So I was able to get out of that and say, okay, let me solve this problem by organizing the data in a way that supports the dashboards I'm trying to create. Yes, sir.
On the data side, do you guys do the data management platform or will you provide data warehouse or you bring in
So on the data side, what am I using for my data platform? All of my data lives in Teradata. It used to live in SAS, and we ported it all to Teradata. The ETL work that comes in is done in SAS. We wrote all our own ETL. So we have process jobs that come in because there's always a new media type. Yesterday's Instagram is tomorrow's who know what, and I'm going to have to consume that, so I have to have a level of flexibility. We process about 8 million records a week just in media data. All right. Well, I thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys have a fabulous Tableau conference. Do fill out the survey.